Hello. Hi. Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. I know I am a totally unknown quantity. I have never done this before. I've never addressed a group like this before, other than podcasts. I fretted over this presentation for quite a few months, and then I came to yesterday's talks. My first time at NarraScope and my first time seeing these talks. And I saw Meredith Grand's very touching, personal speech. I saw Francisco Gonzalez's great talk on, there he is, on union actors. He's a fantastic designer and voice director. I have nothing but the highest regard for him. I attended Allison Gray's talk on the same subject, more or less, that I'm covering today, or somewhat anyway, and she is a fine writer and a fine person to be around. I've just really enjoyed talking to her, meeting with her, and playing one of her games. And I've talked to a lot of other people that I never knew until I walked in the door. And never one to shy away from making work for myself. I went home after Allison's talk yesterday evening, and I rewrote about 3/4 of my presentation. Unfortunately, you're not supposed to mess with the slides 24 hours before the talk. So I was locked into my slides. I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable consideration. So I had to rewrite my rewrites so that it would kind of go with the slides. So if you see rough edges, that's one of the reasons. I have one other caveat, and that is that adventure games are very close to my heart. I played my first adventure game when I was in my teens. It was the 1970s. A family friend took me to his place of business. They had a mainframe, and he said, "You should see this. You might like this." And it was adventure, or Colossal Cave, whatever you want to call it. There was no monitor. There was a teletype, and then the responses would come out of a dot matrix, not a dot, a daisy wheel printer, about 2,500 decibels per character. And I fell in love. And my very first thought while playing it was, I wonder if these could be funny. So and that's not the caveat. The caveat is that they are so close to my heart and the way I see myself, because this was over 50 years ago. I get verklempt when people express their appreciation for these games, because when we were working on the games, we were just having fun. And the life cycle of the games in the 1990s was a couple of months. We might get some stragglers afterwards who bought the game afterwards, but for the most part, we saw these as totally disposable. And that a year after we released them, no one would be talking about them, thinking about them, writing about them, anything. So the fact that people, I'm getting verklempt. The fact that people come up to me, and this happened in Portland last year too, and say, this game was seminal in my youth. I played this when I was a kid. But, people are saying how important these games are to them, and we had no concept that would ever occur, or at least I certainly didn't. And I'm going to repeat a line that I've used too many times in the last 2 years, but I'm retiring it today. And that line is that if we had had any idea that people would still be talking about or playing these games 30 years down the line, 35, 40 years down the line, we would have worked hard on them. So anyway, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and if at times I actually choke up for a moment or two, please bear with me. I'm old and sentimental. So anyway, one more bit of business. My promise to you, I will not simply parrot my slides back to you. This is both a waste of time and it gives the audience no credit at all for basic literacy. Thank you. So, what are my qualifications for talking about this topic? Well, my qualifications are games. I love games. I own a lot of them. I've paid for some of the ones that I own. And of the ones that I played, I've even finished a few. So I assume my experience is roughly equivalent to everyone else's experience. These are some of the companies that I've worked for. If I had the time, I would tell you why my year at Sega of America in the run-up to the release of the Dreamcast was the single least productive year of my adult life. But that's a whole other topic. Maybe next year. The really nice thing about talking to this group is that I don't have to tell you what it was like when we lost the parser in commercial games and went to cursors. And most of my comments today are going to be about icon-based point-and-click games, not about text adventures, because a lot of what I'm going to say is going to be harsh, and that's directed at the graphic adventures, not the text adventures. So what did we lose when we lost the parser? We lost several things. We lost the ability to choose what to interact with. One of the most frustrating things for me is that I could no longer infer. If I was in a room and playing a text game and it said, you're in a brightly lit room. Well, it doesn't have to mention a lamp. I can say, look at the lamp or look at the chandelier, whatever, and it'll respond. Can't do that in a graphic game if you can't see it on this. If there's a desk and I'm facing the desk in the graphic, I can't say open the drawer because I'm in front of the desk. I can't see the drawer. We lose too much. Another thing we lost, by the way, and this came up during lunch, Sierra used to get hundreds of letters saying, I learned English by playing your games. That all went away too. And so we lost what to interact with and how to interact with it. We got reduced to a small number of verbs. Very dull for a player like me, whose greatest joy in playing these games was thinking, did the designer anticipate this? Did the designer anticipate that? Well, when you spell out all the verbs for me, I know they've all been anticipated. There's no exploration there. There's no joy of discovery. So my overriding thing is we lost entertainment value. Storytelling is a form of entertainment. We are all entertainers first and foremost. The storytelling comes second, but we can't engage with the audience. We can't make them cry. We can't make them angry. We can't spur them to action unless we're engaging with them. And to engage them, I'm sorry, we have to amuse them in some way. Oh, this is not making me at all verklempt. So I'm a very entertainment-focused guy. I spent 6 years doing stand-up comedy. Last time I did it was 1990 at a Christmas party at Sierra. Actually, that's the only reason I became a designer, because at the end of the show, Ken Williams came backstage and he said, you know, you're an entertaining kind of guy. You should be designing these games, not producing them. And I said, yes, yes, yes. So, anyway, you have to engage with them on some level, and before you can produce the desired emotional reaction, whatever it is you're trying to get from them, a laugh or whatever. And this is where generic messages come in, and this is my big bugaboo, is generic messages. I understood generic messages for text adventures, because your choice of verbs is functionally infinite. I mean, it's as big as the dictionary. There's no possible way to anticipate all that. But once we switched over to icons, what's the excuse? There are no unknowns. We know exactly what the player can try, and I think it should be handled. You know, it was a bad review that spurred me to write this talk today. I thought I might even post the bad review, and then I thought, where's the entertainment value in that? Go. There it is. No entertainment value in that, ladies and gentlemen. So there are two reasons that I think generic messages are an offense. And here they are. Number one is that they're anti-entertainment. They are a waste of time and energy. The player makes a choice. Oh, I see something on screen. I think I'll interact with it. How should I interact with it? I'm going to do this. I'm going to click on it. Bam. Waste of time, waste of energy. Nope, sorry, nothing to see here. Move on. So that's a waste of time and energy. And granted, it's only a moment, but it adds up. And you're bound to have hundreds of instances like that. And so even more than a waste of time is that they're boring. Generic messages are boring the second time you've heard them. If they're particularly clever, maybe you can eke 3 viewings out of them before they lose their shine. But why would you deliberately put anything in your game that you knew was going to bore people and waste their time? I don't know. Not me. So I don't think they should be the norm. I think they've become a norm the same way that mazes were once a norm, or dead ends. But we can do away with them now. It's just a lot of work. I want to run through very quickly the way that other companies handled the loss of the parser, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Infocom came out with Shogun. That was their first adventure game with graphics, but it was still a parser-driven game. It looked like this. And then they came out with Journey. And Journey was actually a point-and-click game and could actually be completed from start to finish with point-and-click. But that was their last game. They came out with a disastrous database program called Cornerstone, and that was the end of Infocom. So some people from Infocom left, and they formed Legend Entertainment. Bob Bates, Mike Verdu, some programmers, and this was Bob Bates' second game, and the what he did was, you had a list of verbs, you had a list of nouns, you had your compass rose, and you had your most used commands in the upper left-hand corner. He was trying to bridge the gap between parser and cursors. Unfortunately, it didn't really last. And in fact, that was pretty much the end of it until Leisure Suit Larry 7, believe it or not. Leisure Suit Larry, oh my God. In Leisure Suit Larry 7, you actually could play the entire game point and click, or you had a partial parser. You couldn't choose the noun. You had to choose something you could see on screen, but then you could type in any verb that you wanted. So Al tried to do his best. It didn't catch on. And now, I hate to diss anyone's game professionally. That's not a good use of my time. But I need to talk about a game. And the reason I bring up Full Throttle is because I loved it. I thought the characters were amazing. I loved the art. I loved most of the interaction. But what I didn't like, was that there are all these things in the background that you couldn't interact with at all. You had no parser, so of course you couldn't say, what is that? The cursor would turn red if it was something you could interact with, but as you can see, most of the items in the background are completely non-interactive. And I'm like, well, why did the artist bother putting them in if you're not going to illuminate them some way, explain their being there, make a joke about them, maybe even have them be useful? I don't know. So anyway, I was at Sierra Online. I'd been there for, I don't know, maybe about a year. And they said, we want you to design a game with Al Lowe called Freddy Pharkas, Frontier Pharmacist. The person that played it. And I thought, how am I going, as the person who's responsible for writing just about everything, how am I going to make up for the fact that you can't explore? And I took as my inspiration Mad Magazine. Mad Magazine has been making people laugh nonstop at the time for 40 years. Now it's closer to 80. And what I particularly loved about Mad Magazine were these splash screens that they would do for all their movie parodies, TV, comic, radio. And there were a zillion details. You could spend an hour, well, not an hour. You could spend a lot of time looking and finding little gags, little jokes, references to other artists or other stories in the magazine. So much to see, so much to do, and all kind of delightful. So I sort of took that as my inspiration for Freddy Pharkas, and now comes my descent into hell. I'm having a conversation, not sure if it was with Al or maybe someone else on the team, but I said, well, what about inventory objects on other inventory objects? And the reply was, well, if it triggers solving a puzzle, making some sort of advance or something, of course it will be handled. Otherwise, it'll be generic. And I said, well, what about if you're close? Like, if you have a piece of paper you're supposed to do something, you have to write something on, but you haven't written something on it yet, and then you apply it to the glue or something like that. And the response was, well, we can handle that too. We can use near useful combinations as clues. And I was like, great, but wait a minute. What about all the other combinations? Well, we can personalize those. We can capture the item and what you're trying to do with it. So we can say you cannot use the piece of paper on the horse flatulence or part of the game. And I'm thinking, but that as a player, that is not satisfying to me. And moreover, oh, now I'm passionate. Moreover, shouldn't the response be different if you're taking one object and putting it on another, as opposed to if you're taking this object and putting it on this? If I have a piece of paper that I need to apply glue on, I can see clicking the bottle of glue on the piece of paper to apply the glue. But if I take the piece of paper and put it on the bottle of glue, to me, that doesn't say put glue on the piece of paper. That says hide the label, change the label on the bottle of glue. So I wasn't satisfied. Everyone else was, but I wasn't. So I made a spreadsheet that hung on the wall. This is actual size. Is this upside down? Upside down. Inventory object on other inventory object. And I thought it was more impressive to actually have an analog visual aid than to put it on a slide. So this was up through the entire project, and I'd say, all right, I'm going to do this line today, I'm going to do that line tomorrow. I was actually able to X out a lot of them because there were a lot of inventory objects you couldn't have at the same time as another inventory object, so that saved me some work. But that started my descent into madness. And then of course, there was the actual handling for the rest of the game. We kind of teased the player at the beginning. You unlock the door to the pharmacy, and you get 500 points, which is half the total of the entire game. But we take it away a few minutes later. Oh, wonderful music. Score! And then there was Space Quest 6 a little while later. Now I should say that when I wrote Freddy, I wrote thousands and thousands of messages. What I started doing was I'm in the pharmacy and I'm like, every shelf of every stand has its own message. So that was already a lot more text than Sierra was used to dealing with. But they would say, well, text is cheap, so as long as it doesn't require any additional animation, go for it. So I went for it. Turns out, a year later, they decided to make a CD version. That was not part of the original plan. I did not know about it. I got a call one day as I was working on Space Quest 6, and it was Al Lowe, and he was in the studio. And he said, we're not recording anymore of the Freddy text. And I said, I didn't know you were recording any of it. He said, yes, we're doing a CD version. They didn't want to bother you. You were doing Space Quest 6, but we have done all the text in the game except for the inventory on inventory. And we have been here for a week, and we are tired, and we are cranky, and we are going home. So 15% of the total text, because this represented about 15%, was cut out of the game. And I said, well, that's kind of a problem, see, because there's lots of clues in there. And they were like, oh, yeah. So they put the text back in the game, but you couldn't get the text unless you played the game as text only. Otherwise, you just got generic messages when you clicked one inventory item on another. And that broke my heart, because otherwise I thought it was a terrific CD. The casting was great. The direction was great. So other than that, I was happy with it. But I was on Space Quest 6, and I was a short timer on Space Quest 6, only worked on it for a little while. So I kind of went for broke. Now, as if I hadn't already. This is the Ascendo pad. I don't know how many hotspots you would pick for this. How many would you pick?
The interior of the shaft, just in case someone falls
75?
down and needs some light.
You're a man after my own heart.
The Ascendo pad works much like an elevator.
I did 16. And even that people thought was beyond the pale. And then I got to, I left Sierra and I went to Legend. Got to work with Bob Bates, which excited me tremendously. He had done 2 fantastic text adventures for Infocom, Arthur and Sherlock, and then Eric the Unready and Time Quest. And they assigned me for a time to Shannara, or Shannara, whatever you prefer, that Corey and Laurie Cole were designing. They assigned me to it without Corey and Laurie's knowledge or permission. That was a little bit of an issue between us for some years, but my main effort at Legend was Callahan's Crosstime Saloon. The other person who's played it. I wrote Callahan's during the most depressed time of my life. I sat in a sky chair, I had a sky chair set up in my living room, that hangs from the ceiling, and I had ropes so that I could open my garage door and let my dog out without having to get up, and then close the door again. And I sat in that chair for days and days and days. I eventually got kind of tired of their arrangement. Was not icons. Their arrangement was you would click on an object and you would get a short list of verbs that you could do with that object. As we see, these are your options. Most objects had fewer options than that. I mean, there was open, take, examine. That was usually about it. But I ran out of patience with that low number of verbs. So when you get to the door, which we'll do in a moment, you can see how I lost patience. I know this was part of Allison's presentation yesterday. Let's see. So I went a little crazy. Did I go too far? Definitely. God, a million answers. I did this somewhere else in the game too, but I don't remember exactly where. Shit, how did that get in there again? Anyway, there's a lot to be learned from entertainment. A lot of lessons in entertainment. There's, the rule of 3. There's never read your own reviews. I don't know who can abide by that, but I certainly can. Because my curiosity about what people think of what I did, doesn't stop when my game hits the market. So I read the reviews, and I probably shouldn't. Another piece of entertainment lore, end with a song. For Christ's sake, end with a song. If Brian Moriarty's Trinity had ended with a production number, people would be reloading it every 10 years, doing new versions of it. Don't discount the power. That's why I wanted a ballad in Freddy Pharkas, because I knew I'd be able to end with a song and leave people humming. They love that. So, in general, I don't believe in rules. A rule seems like an opportunity to do something that no one thought could be done and just do it better than anyone imagined it could be done. Vaudeville is not dead. Believe it or not, it lives on in reels, on TikTok. Magicians, contortionists, jugglers, what other example? Daredevils, escape artists, comedians, Um, Boredom is the big enemy of entertainment. That is one rule that I cannot manage to escape. I am told that towards the end of my talk, it is almost mandatory to have a Q&A session. So here are my questions for you. Actually, this all facetious. I'm not asking you. There isn't time. I am happy to accept questions. Have I raced through? Am I almost out of time?
You have 15 minutes.
Oh, I have 15 minutes. Oh, I went way too fast. But I am willing at this point to accept any questions. If you want to come up and say about generic messages, you are 100% correct. That's fine. Come and do that. But other than that, I'll take questions. Yes.
So when you were writing that many lines of flavor text messages, how do you avoid them getting repetitive in a way that's unfun or unfun?
Well,
Repeat the question.
yes. When you're writing that many questions, how do you avoid them sounding repetitive and unfunny? Am I paraphrasing that?
Yeah, more.
Okay. Well, it's a constant danger. The important thing, of course, is a good editing pass. I have been fortunate in almost always being able to do an editing pass. Callahan's, I did not. It shipped one night without any knowledge on my part. And I said, but editing. And they were like, we didn't have a choice. So a lot of it has to do with searching through your old text, making sure you're not repeating words, you're not repeating entire punchlines, which I have done. You know, it's a lot more grunt work in addition to the grunt work you've already created for yourself. Hopefully to the benefit of the player. Yes, sir.
Do you have any tips for convincing your boss that taking time to non-generic messages are worth the time?
Do you have any tips for convincing your boss that spending a lot of time adding non-generic messages is worth their time and yours? I have generally found almost everyone to be accepting if I take it upon myself and I don't say I'm going to increase my hours, I'm going to do it for myself because this is what I think a game needs. They are usually fine. The response I got most often was, as long as you're not adding any animation, text is cheap, add away. So I did not get much resistance at all. You had a question?
Same as the first question.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
So my question is about the door.
The door.
And what's interesting is that, and I know you're very much saying, okay, yes, parser all the way, right? But when you're looking at a list of verbs like that, and if it's a big list of verbs, there is a thing where you are inviting the player to try all of them, as opposed to if it's just you don't know what all the verbs are, they can try some. The persistent ones will try more, and then the others will just move on, right? I'm wondering, and I think the critical review was maybe pointing at some of this way.
I don't know what you're talking about.
What's interesting to me is that when I'm just looking at that video from a player's perspective, it seems like structurally I'll very quickly get that, okay, this is a failed message, this is a failed message, this is a failed message. I might just need to, and even though they're flavored, like the pattern matching very quickly gets you to be like, oh, okay, I might just need to find the correct one in here and such, right? So I'm just kind of wondering how you've kind of navigated that as things have transitioned into more the graphic side of things to prevent the player from just kind of jumping to those conclusions of like, oh, okay, now it's a chore of me finding the right one because the other ones are just failed message, rather than, ooh, it's an interesting little piece of flavor that I got.
Okay, I'm going to have trouble paraphrasing this. If you, for instance, with the door in Callahan's, how do you handle the fact that you have all these options? The players have no idea which, if any, are important to continuing the game. And is it possible to burn out the player from trying the options? Is that a fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, it is absolutely possible to burn out the player with them. And that is a tightrope that you need to walk. It's partly a matter of trusting your own, in my case, sense of humor, but it might not be sense of humor. It might be sense of drama or whatever. If you trust your sense of humor, you have to believe that the players who are playing your game understand that it is the way you do things to put in a lot of flavor text, and that finding the important things is going to be harder. Almost as hard as it was in text adventures when your list of possibilities is wide open. So, yeah. Some people are not going to like it. I have certainly received criticism from people who said, I didn't know what was important and what was not important, and I got tired of trying. Well, that was a failure on my part. I consider it. In comedy, you are often told, never blame the audience. That is a really hard thing to do. In comedy, you have the advantage of the immediacy of the feedback. You can immediately tell that your jokes aren't landing for whatever reason. There's something about your attitude, whatever, and you can adjust on the fly. And, you don't have that kind of freedom with a game.
I think one kind of sub point that I wanted to kind of get at my question is that, like, in a parser-based world, I'm thinking more about the players, the completionist sensibilities. When they see a thing like this, they might feel like they have to click on all of it. Whereas if it's parser based, then you have, like, even if you have like 100 verbs, they might not feel like they have to do all of it. It's not displayed all
Right.
at the same time. Whereas that fatigue might kick in because you show the full list, if that makes sense.
Right. I'm going to have trouble paraphrasing that one. Can you? I was going to say.
It was more of a comment, I think, in the sense, or that was kind of the direction I was coming from for the previous question, I guess, right? Which is that it seems like it's a.
Sorry. Sorry. If you have a.
We can talk afterwards if you want.
Okay, so this is a question from the chat. It's sort of silly, but should we get Jimmy to criticize anything else in order to get more talks?
Yes. I would enjoy it. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if you've ever had a situation where you're writing more choices for a couple of different things, and in the process of doing that, you discover, well, what if they did this and this, and there's another solution that you want to have them add to a problem game. So you've never came up with an alternate path.
Okay, so what if you are writing for various verbs and noun combinations, and you realize that what if the player tries this? What if the player does that? Am I close?
Would it be something to add?
Would it be something to add? My instinct would be absolutely. Anything people think of during testing to try, I think to myself, oh, more than one person's going to try that. I want to handle it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of parsers. I feel like the experience of a lot of
like classic adventure games is tuning into the author's like mood or the vibe, trying to think, like mind meld.
Right.
And in a lot of them that's humor, tuning into their sense of humor, but in some like anchorhead, horror thing, it's kind of thinking along morbid lines to reach the solution. So I'm wondering if, like, in a non-parser interface, if there were any discoveries about like how to, enable that kind of experience without like, just brute forcing like combination spaces.
What methods, if any, have I found to produce certain reactions in a non-parser environment? I'm not quite getting that right.
That experience of trying to tune into like to reach a solution by thinking of the mood, or the horror, humor, whatever.
To reach a solution by trying to hone in on the designer's frame of mind and approach to their material. I've never found it to be an issue, only because, and I hope this addresses the question, because it's very brainy and I'm not thinking. But I have just shamelessly moved ahead with my own sense of humor, my own sense of drama. The way I manipulate the player is in timing the messages. Timing obviously being a crucial part of comedy, by forcing the player to reveal the messages at the speed I want them to reveal them. I can heighten the impact of a punchline, of a dramatic moment. There's a very dramatic moment in Callahan's that's completely out of character for the rest of the game. Had to handle it very sensitively. It tied into Spider's original books. And there he is. I don't have a particular method. I just brazen it out there, manipulate the timing the best that I can, and hope that the player's with me. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what's something you would want to see in modern edition parsing?
What's something I would want to see in a modern version of a parser game? I would like a parser. The parser I envision in my mind is so robust that there's nothing that I could give it that it wouldn't recognize. I know that I can't handle all the messages, but if I talk about a concept, maybe it can say something about the concept without being specific. So I want to approach, and what I have tried to do in the past is create banks of generic messages that are different in tone and so on, and I'm talking hundreds, so that the likelihood of anyone getting exactly the same message twice is minimized. Because I'm a glutton for punishment. Yes, sir.
What affordances for design and play do you find this richness adds? Like, what does a very rich game like this let the player do they can't do in a
They can't. What does it let them do?
that they couldn't do in other games that don't have
What I find this degree, what advantages does this kind of richness have for the play? What does it afford the player that they might not be able to get from other games? They get their exploration rewarded in ways that go beyond, this is helping you solve the puzzle, or drop it. Because that seems to be the paradigm of so many games. If the combination you try, whatever you try, doesn't directly help the puzzle, you get almost no illumination. you just get a refusal. And I like to think that what I'm doing is making it worth the player's time to click on something, even if they know it's not going to help them solve a puzzle, they will momentarily be entertained. That's the hope. Yes, sir.
Sorry,
Oh.
we're at time. Sorry.
At a time.
You can always talk in the hall or whatever, so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.